Hello, this is Audrey, and I want to share a book theory. So, this is me when I'm studying about neuroscience and theology. I learned and I received some of the ideas from one book, and this book is called Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. So basically, this book is very detailed to tell us what kind of people do think about the spiritual experiences and how people are often think about these spiritual events. Firstly, using the neuroscience, and some point of view are actually very new to me, and it really made me gain more knowledge from it. So from the structure, firstly, it explains some of the problems in scientific approaches. Undoubtedly, science have some bad approaches or even some very basic questions exist. And those questions are often being seen like cannot be explained, well, because of some limitations, of course. And the second of the structure is James' history and typology of experience. This introduced a whole type of academic area that I never touched before. The third one is the review of studies, like his own studies. Fourth one, author's original data on triggers via mixed qualitative and quantitative. The five, evidence-based typology. Sixth one, conscientious problems. This is very interesting point here. I would really want to highlight it. Although I did not much to really focus on it because it is not really help to writing my essay, but I do believe it is a very good point. And finally, the psychological reports. So basically, it says that the spiritual evidence, like spiritual experience, involve the cognition, affect, and perception. These three are the basic, like the components of a spiritual experience. He give these results, he collect this from like myth, religious books, like even in the very old epics. He knows that when people experience it, it contains cognition, affect, and perception, which perception, I think everyone could accept this point of view. When you're feeling some spiritual happening, you can sense a very clear feeling, well, you have never get that before, which is the perception. You have perception to happening something. Like when you see an angel in front of you, you have the perception of that angel must tell you something. Or if some people do something worse, they will begin to think like the angels come and get me. And then spiritual is the modern term that captures James' broad approach, which is beyond a narrow religious dogma. He wants to let the people, whether they believe religious or not, to think the spiritual experience out of the zone of like purely just the religious point of view. They want to let them think that spiritual experience are not only for those who are sincere in their religious, who know exactly well what does the dogma tells. He wants to express that people without those factors can also experience, and very informative about it. Hence, it can be the spiritual experience, the sense of perceiving unseen reality, not mere confusion, like a fever dream. It is a very clear distinguish between a sense of perceiving an unseen reality. Maybe it seems impossible to totally perceive a reality that is beyond your knowledge for nowadays, but it is not like the confusion we have with fever dreams. Fever dream do not have any logic, and you do not know what exactly the dream trying to tell you. That's why I do not believe the people who are trying to analyze their dreams, because it is just a dream and it did not happen any spiritual kind of stuff. Well, it is related to your memories and your experiences, but it's definitely not trustworthy. So it is very clear distinguish between like a fever dream. So just started to realize now that the spiritual experience are not a fever dream. And then the advantage it can bring is that it can capture commonality across traditions, endless scientific study, enable the scientific study despite the religious concept. It can be focused on observable and measurable aspect, no need of considered, is it real? So basically, people tend to think like they are trying to figure it out if a spiritual experience are real, because commonly nobody will going to believe someone who said they meet God directly in the way of their coming back home. That's kind of like Apostle Paul's story. Well, here he points out by using this definition, it can reduce to let people think if this is real or not, so that people will not suspect on the accuracy of it, so that they won't do any research. So James is trying to say that it across the traditions, whether which country you're in, which culture you have, which traditions you believe in, if you have this definition, you can of course regardless of them, because it did not have any religious dogma and it didn't contain any ideologies. So it enabled scientific study. This definition is given as if beyond the point of view which saying that the spiritual experience are just like totally a mind theory from a certain person, but it says that it can enable scientifically study, which means scientific is like globally using tool. Everyone from this world can use science to explain certain things, and thus are be seen as trustworthy. And so it proves that it is really a nice definition, and Mr. James did explain it a lot. The statement for saying that neuroscience shows patterns and explanations during prayer, meditation, nature, grief, etc. experiences. So, there is the statement of saying that neuroscience in our mind, or more specific in our soul, it works when we do the prayer, meditation, like those religious rituals. So obviously, he's trying to relate it, the religious experience, like those same spiritual things, to the neuroscience part. Like those things are totally can be explained by neuroscience. But for me, I think he's trying to say that neuroscience will sometimes prefer to be like a tool. Because of the religious and spiritual belief, we will have this sense of feelings and this sense of action, so that's the neuroscience can be applied to it. And then the different understanding from different culture, like Western culture, basically is 1. Believe heavy. Interpret like they feel emotionally powerful, connect with divine directly. So this explains different groups to react how they receive the spiritual experience. First group, they feel like they're really within their God. When they receive this kind of feeling, they're totally direct with their God. They're together. Like this kind of situation will happen and it can totally change a person's life in opinion. And also number 2, fever dream confusion, interpret like confusing, hallucinatory, and disordering. So number 2 type group of people, they think that these are not trustworthy, just like a fever dream, and we cannot trust any words from it. Maybe I just too tired, or maybe I just like having some type of hallucination, and it does not relate to any God. It just because it's all the sense, like all the things in this experience are just from part of my life, from my experience, from my worries, for what I think in my deep mind, what mindset it does reveal. It's kind of like to reveal your dreams and analyze it. So it comes to the number 3 group. It is very, I think for me, it's like they're really not that logically. This group of people, they think the people who believe or sense or like experience the spiritual experiences, they are just totally lost their minds. They do not know what they're doing. They just feel like they're being trapped by some supernatural power, and that is lunatic. That is means you're not normal, because it is indeed abnormal to like any human beings experiencing. For like me, I'm sitting right now, but if you see that I'm actually ascending to the sky, you'll be like, this woman must use something else, or she's trying to be a liar, she's totally lost her mind, she is trying, like, when you see something happen like this, you first doubt someone else or doubt yourself, like if you're too tired to have this kind of things happen to you. So you will be really careful about your mental health. And then the last point that I mentioned is the triggers. So for psychologically, it is the best way than VR or even meditation. So in typology, different type provide different description and examples. So like when you're doing the typology, you all know that from different part it may bring like totally different things. So from nominios, it's like the presence of divinity. It's around yourself. It is full of aesthetic. And it is paranormal, beyond human knowledge. The example is like you're feeling enveloped by God, thoughts stop in beauty. Or more terribly, you see the ghost and the spirit directly. Well, the limitations of this use scientific studies to explain, is that experiences feel revelatory, but science can't verify if they reveal true metaphysics. Science can't reveal it, like science study indeed are a crucial part to justify something. Well, it cannot be revealed by the true metaphysics, so the supernatural claims are unfalsifiable. It cannot be false, tested, or contradicted by any empirical observation or experiment. That means that the supernatural claims, things as supernatural indeed happened. So that means that shows the limitation of science. You cannot use science to explain it because you have no idea what happened. It's beyond any of the science theory. You cannot test it out because you cannot do the experiment. No one, nobody, can copy one exactly event happened before that was considered to be the spiritual experience. Spiritual are not like our logical mind. It can be testified, like by experiment. That is to find out what is the basic rule of this world. Spiritual totally not. Spiritual world is more likely to be a very free, and it is beyond our logic. We cannot know, or really cannot know. So, in my opinion, to conclude this book is to stay humble. Well, as a scientist, psychologists say, I don't know about the ultimate reality. How will we know how much reality this world have? Maybe something big is happening beyond our knowledge and power, and we couldn't know, we couldn't find out. So choose a belief or a religion is actually a good thing. Like for me, of course, I am a Christian. So that's why I choose to believe it, because when I was very young, I know that I sense that these words are some type of like some divine power control everything, include where I came from. I of course do not understand the bullshit of the evolution, but at least we need to stay humble to find out what is the real thing. Like, don't you think the spiritual experience cannot explain by science is really cool and deserve to be wondering about? So I think this book is like really interesting.